Good afternoon, everyone. It's Debbie and Rolo here, and this is possibly our last live for a little while. Today I've decided to read to you from the second book in the Secret Adventures of Rolo series, the Chilvester Passage. And Rolo is no stranger to a pandemic. He's worn a mask before, and this is chapter 15, and it's called Rolo and the Black Death. Athelstan sent for me and told me my next task might well need the help of Chickpea. I didn't mind. Although she could be a bit annoying with her continual questioning, I have to admit I quite liked the company. This time we were bound for 14th century Bristol at the height of the Black Death. I'd overheard the floppy-haired boy talking to his mum about recent theories that the plague had been viral and not spread by flea bites born on the back of rats, as previously thought. But the research had not proved conclusive, and so the medieval rat was still in the frame as far as he was concerned. I said to Chickpea, full of confidence, "Simple, we get rid of the rats and the fleas will disappear and the plague will die out. You mark my words." I heard my family reading a bedtime story once about the Pied Piper of Hamelin. He was a musician who dressed in multicoloured clothes and used music to lure rats away from the town, Chickpea replied. Let me think about this for a moment, I said. "I can borrow a recorder, but I don't know how to play it," chipped in Chickpea, trying to be helpful. Recorder, now that had given me an idea. All I had to do was find a piece of music that might induce rats to plunge into the sea. I already had the means of recording the music and playing it back. "What sort of music do you think might send rats crazy and make them plummet to their deaths?" I asked Chickpea. Scraping violins, heavy metal, rap, screechy opera, bagpipes, she suggested, hopefully. "That's it! We need to get hold of a recording of bagpipes. That should do the trick." I was very excited about the idea and knew exactly where to find one. When the smiley lady and floppy-haired boy went up to Scotland, they came back with a CD of the music, but it was so mournful they couldn't listen to it. I knew it was in the box room with the other junk. I managed to record the most miserably wailing track, featuring the drone of the pipes that I could find, but had to trust my judgment for the quality of recording because it was too painful to play back. I asked Athelstan if he'd like to listen as we prepared for our nighttime adventure, but he shook his head. Yulia said, "Make sure you keep that machine well and truly turned off when we're in the time tunnel, or it will send us all mad. And here, take this for your ears." She stuck a soft lump of something on the back of the tape recorder, which I'd looped around my neck. With an air of anticipation, Chickpea and I entered the hole in the tree right behind Yulia once we'd dropped the pink balls at Athelstan's feet. We popped out on the other side with some trepidation. We were travelling back to a time of great pestilence, and if we weren't careful, we might catch the plague ourselves and bring it back to the 21st century. I told Chickpea that I'd heard the floppy-haired boy say that in some parts of London, the old plague pits where the victims of the deadly disease had been buried in mass graves all those centuries ago were still not allowed to be built on to this day for fear of reinfecting the population. Yulia tied small handkerchiefs round our muzzles and then burst out laughing as she thought we resembled cowboys. "I don't see the point of the mask," said Chickpea, her words muffled by the handkerchief. "Well, why do you think so many people in Asia wore masks when SARS broke out a few years ago? To prevent them from being infected with germs, of course," I replied. I have no idea where that knowledge came from, but it sounded impressive, and it silenced Chickpea. Sometimes I surprised myself. What we did know about the Black Death was that it struck fast and killed its victims within 3 or 4 days. The plague seemed a mixture of bubonic and pneumonic, and it didn't discriminate between wealthy and poor, young and old. It struck villages as well as cities. One thing seemed clear: Poor sanitation and overcrowding didn't help, as this encouraged the disease to spread quickly, and there was no escaping it. In London, the River Thames was a flowing cesspool used both for the disposing of human waste and as a source of drinking water. Rats were everywhere. When the king raised concern about the state of the streets in the capital in 1349, he was told nothing could be done because all street cleaners had perished in the plague. In London alone, it was estimated that between a third and a half the population had been wiped out. Yulia advised us to keep an eye on each other for any sign of swellings or marks appearing in the area where our little legs joined our bodies. Frankly, we were terrified. So much to think about. There we were, arriving in Bristol in the spring of 1350 with little more than handkerchiefs over our mouths to keep us safe. All our hopes lay in an old tape recorder and a hunch about the effect of bagpipe music on rodents. The moans of the afflicted were the first things we heard, pitiful and wailing. Chickpea thought I'd turned on the tape recorder by mistake. Then we noticed the smell, the filth of the streets and contaminated water lying everywhere, and adding to that the aroma of running sores and decomposing bodies. In short, the stench of the plague. "Now what?" said Chickpea, her eyes watering as she mumbled through her handkerchief. I suggested that we run to the docks, as this was the place most rats seemed to originate from, coming off ships in their droves. Without hanging about too much and gagging from the stench, we headed to the quayside, and sure enough the place was teeming with rats, millions of them. They all seemed to be on a mission, running this way and that, scavenging for food, and no doubt flea-ridden. "Quick, get the tape recorder going," said Chickpea, once we'd located the soft stuff which Yulia had given us to stuff gently in our ears. It turned out to be beeswax. We perched on the quayside, and I pressed the play button on the tape recorder, turning up the volume dial as high as I possibly could. The sounds of wailing and droning filled the air. Luckily, the beeswax filtered out most of it, so we didn't have to listen to it ourselves. Miraculously, the noise seemed to have the desired effect on the rats. They started frantically running round in circles, bumping into each other in their frenzy to escape the terrible noise coming out from the machine. A smart rat tried to seize the tape recorder. I had to shield it and snap at him to keep away. All right, I admit it. Not all rats are as stupid as I first thought. Or are they? The rat who tried to stop the racket ran instead to the edge of the quay, and, as if he were magnetic, all the rest of them started to follow. One by one, the rats plunged into the Bristol Channel to their watery deaths and were not seen again. I must just pause to show you Chantal's drawing. I absolutely love this picture of Rolo and Chickpea wearing their handkerchief masks. I turned off the tape recorder with a resounding click. Thank goodness that was over. "Let's hope they took their fleas with them," said Chickpea. We couldn't wait to return to the time tunnel, and once back collapsed at Athelstan's feet. Yulia and Dar made us roll in wet leaves at once. They were quite insistent. I doubted whether wet oak leaves really had antiseptic properties, but didn't have the energy to start an argument. Chickpea and I trotted off to our respective homes, smelling of damp leaves and minus the little hankies, quite exhausted by our experience. The smiley lady saw me scratch my neck the next morning. There was a little itchy bit just behind my right ear. I couldn't quite reach it with my back leg. Bath time, Rolo, and I think it's time we renewed your anti-flea protection. I can't remember when we last did it, but I'm sure it must be due. Later that day, I was curled up with the floppy-haired boy, and he sneezed loudly, twice. I shot off his lap. The smiley lady laughed. "Rolo doesn't like it when people sneeze. He always moves away. Lady, if you'd seen what I'd seen in medieval Bristol, you'd avoid sneezers too." So that's the end of today's chapter. Rolo managed to keep fairly still, but he's now getting very, very wriggly. So thank you so much for listening. I will be back with some more live chapters, but I think I will just give it a rest for a couple of days, and I'll let you know via Rolo's Facebook page, rolodogblog, when we're going to go live again. But meanwhile, stay well, everybody, and thank you so much for listening. And remember, you can watch all of Rolo's live videos on his Facebook page or on my YouTube channel, which you can find by searching for my name. Thank you very much. Goodbye for now.